Hey guys, how's it going? This is Jay Cruz from Within Health and Wellness. And in today's video, I am going to go over the details of what happened to me in my injury back in January of 2019. Stay tuned. So the day was Friday, January 25th, 2019. That day started just like every other day. Did the same exact things, came to work, and did what I have to do at work. But that day definitely ended very different than the rest. I remember it was 3 o'clock and I was on the phone with my boss, just having a normal conversation in regards to work. But when I hung up the phone, I felt this weird little tap on my spine in the back, right in between my shoulder blades. It was very subtle, but then it was associated with some warmth that was generating from that spot. It was going through my shoulders, down my back. My muscles began to cramp. The heat was intensifying, and then there was this pain that was very unbearable. A pain that brought me down to my knees. My very first instinct was to call my wife, in which I did. And she sensed the tone of my voice that I was not doing fine. I was explaining to her kind of what I was feeling. She told me, hang up, call 911. So I did. I called 911 and they did the routine thing of trying to make sure I was not having a stroke or a heart attack or that I wasn't going to faint. I was going to faint though, but I was able to control my breathing to not do that. So they sent over an ambulance and they took me in. Took me up the freeway to Kaiser Roseville, and the journey began, where they tried to figure out what was going on with me. There were very important moments throughout the whole stay in Kaiser, and those are the ones I'm going to go over. I'm not going to really talk about all the very minor details, but for sure pivotal moments. And that very first pivotal moment in Kaiser was when the EMT asked me if I could get myself off the gurney to move over to the other gurney that they had in the hallway for me. And I didn't think much of it, didn't think twice, and I said, yeah, for sure. Why not? I go ahead and move over and I try to place my feet on the floor. I put my weight and I collapse. Did not see that one coming. But they were attentive and they caught me. That was the first concern. They helped me up to the gurney and the waiting process begins. A cycle of different nurses and doctors asking me routine questions, trying to pinpoint and figure out what was going on. They couldn't figure it out. They were actually ready to let me go home because I was no longer in pain. I wasn't uncomfortable. I wasn't feeling anything odd. But I wasn't paying attention that my body was not getting better. It was actually getting numb. That they moved me over to a wheelchair, and that is when I really start noticing that I don't have movement, at least normal movement that I'm used to. And they were getting ready to send me over to a waiting room for discharge, and my wife begins to advocate for me and says, no, there is something wrong. I tried to explain to them that I'm not feeling normal, and they were just trying to tell me like, oh, it's probably from the stress that your back was going through. And I was like, no, why would that take away my movement of my legs? So after advocating for myself and my wife alongside me, they put me into a room and they actually start to really, I guess, take it seriously and assess me. And it started assessing me, and they began to get concerned. I did my best to keep my composure. I told my wife, hey, go home to our kids, I'll be fine. Prior to that, I called my friend who came and to stay with me. So my wife left, and my really good friend was there with me the whole process for that Friday. I was not getting better. I was no longer in pain, but I started realizing that I was losing my temperature control. I was getting hot and then cold and hot and cold. I was losing movement in my legs. I couldn't flex my muscles on my legs. Little things like that. I wasn't fully lost of range of motion on my legs, but I was noticing the deterioration of that movement. I decided to kind of pinch my leg, and then I realized that I wasn't feeling the pain. It felt really numb. By this time, they already done a couple of blood tests, and my main doctor came in, which would be my neurologist. He starts to do some movement, some assessments on me, and obviously a lot of, okay. I leave the room, come back, okay. So they don't really tell me much yet. They're just, we're going to figure out what's going on. And the tests continue, and it is now 10, 11 o'clock. Obviously call my wife, tell her good night. Nothing really was alarming enough that made me feel like I was going to be there for a very long time. Over the night, though, they were increasing their exams on me. And that is when finally my neurologist tells me it's not looking good. Your body is entering a state of paralysis. And it's not slowing down, and we don't know where it's going to go, and we're not sure what exactly you have. So we're going to continue to do these exams on you. One exam in particular, which is a spinal tap. Now, I'd never heard of a spinal tap, but it doesn't sound pleasing. It did not sound pleasing. So pretty much what it is a big old needle that goes right in through your spine, and they pull fluids to kind of just check your nervous system. I was nervous and scared out of my mind that a needle was going to go into my back. But I literally thought, well, my wife's gotten epidurals. She can do it. I know I can do it. I'll be fine. So they start to prep me. My boys are with me, alongside of me. Really appreciate them. And they start prepping me, and I realized that I can't feel the doctor's hands on my back. The procedure went through and I didn't feel a thing. I didn't feel the cold ointment. I didn't feel the needle or where they numbed the area. And I did not feel that thick, long needle. I lost all my sensory to pain. I could not feel a giant needle gouging through my back, into my spine, pulling out fluids and coming back out. I was officially concerned. So at that time I was frozen. I could not really comprehend what in the world was going on. I was literally put in a corner where I had to decide to live in fear of the unknown, or to trust in my God, and to trust that all things are good, even though they don't always look that way. And I chose to believe. I chose that my God was with me, and that would never change regardless of the situations I found myself in. Now, just because I believed that it did not mean that everything got better. I just chose not to live in fear. I just chose not to be controlled by it. I went through the motions of fear. I went through the motion of being stressed out. And of course, why wouldn't I? Definitely entering something very unknown, for sure. So I chose to believe. They finally put me back into my room, and it is now the next morning. I somehow was able to sleep. Pretty sure they put me in all types of medications. And I called my wife and I told her, like, hey, I'm not coming home any day now, or anytime soon. This is what I'm going through, so on and so on. My wife obviously rushes into the hospital, alerts the whole family. Everybody's concerned, not sure what's going on. My wife shows up, starts talking to the doctor, and I was there and she was talking to the doctor, and I don't remember. I zoned out. Now that my wife was there, I was like, I need a time to just exit. And I just remember laying there and just watching her talk to the doctor, and the look of her face and her trying to battle those emotions of fear, but then being brave, and then fear coming back and bravery, and just battling. I can just see it in her face. So they finally got my attention, and they were talking about all the different exams that they had to do, and to try to pinpoint and figure out what I have and what was happening to my body. So they did CAT scans, they did x-rays, blood draws, and MRIs, you name it. I got it all. And the crazy part is every exam came out clean. My doctor could not understand how I was so healthy and I was feeling and going through what I was going through. By this time, he was desperate. I know everybody was desperate. I was desperate of just trying to figure out what was going on. That the most relatable thing that they can think of that I was going through is something called GBS, which is Guillain-Barré syndrome. And it's in the family of MS, muscular sclerosis. I did not have very much information about it, but my wife goes ahead and texts her best friend who's in the medical field, and her response was, do not Google it. It's not going to help. We Googled it. It did not help. I was literally facing the idea that I was going to be paralyzed and deal with paralysis for the rest of my life and be in a wheelchair. But I chose to believe, and I chose to trust. And I chose to trust God. And it was definitely a superpower. It was definitely the Holy Spirit that gave me the patience and strength to roll with the punches. I was like, hey, my whole childhood's been tough. Growing up has been tough. All I know is to roll with the punches. So I took that and I did the same. And I rolled with the punches there. And I said, okay, doc, if that's what you think I have, let's figure out what to do with it. So they started putting me on this steroid treatment that lasted 72 hours. Now, this treatment was so intense that they had to have a nurse manually change the flow of the medicine. They did not just put it on the machine and took off and go. It had to be so precise. The increments that it had to raise every 15 minutes had to be perfect to the T. That they assigned me my own nurse, that every time they gave me that medicine, all she did was stare at that screen and ask me what I was feeling in my symptoms. I would never felt more sick in my life. It led to a lot of vomiting. I had a 72-hour migraine. In the middle of all that, they're still trying to do all these exam and tests. I do not remember those 72 hours. Don't remember what I went through, what was exactly done, what was exactly said, but I have never been more miserable in my life. And I've never been in so much discomfort in my life than those 72 hours. So I'm very grateful for my doctor, my neurologist, because he was not content with the diagnoses that they gave me, GBS. He felt something within him that this was not it, that there was something more and he needed to do more. So he followed that instinct, and I'm very grateful for that. He said we had to do one more MRI exam, but this one was going to be in a different machine with a lot more radiation, and it could be kind of risky from time to time, but he believes since I had such a healthy body and there is not one single deficiency within my body, he didn't feel like there was a concern, and I believed him. So we went into this MRI tube, and I had to be and sit there still for an hour and 15 minutes. The prior MRIs were not very difficult to do so, but this one was because I was now under the administration of the medicine that they were giving me, the steroids. But I had no other option but to do it while on that medicine, while having that 72-hour headache, having the shakes, the nausea, just feeling absolutely horrible. I just remember that they rolled me in, and my nurse was alongside with me, still administrating the medicine to me. It was connected to an IV and everything. And I remember the look in her face, and she was super stressed out, like very concerned. She genuinely cared about my life. And I'm very grateful that the whole team they assigned to me genuinely cared about getting me back to my family. And when they were prepping me, she was telling the gentlemen who were on the MRI, be extra careful, just very concerned about me. It was very sweet. It was very appreciative. So they put me into the MRI, and I'm sitting there doing my best to stay as still as I can. About 45 minutes in, I could no longer control staying still. I started having a panic attack of being confined. The medicine was really taking a toll on me. It was really beating me up, that I had to press the emergency button, and they took me out and instantly just started throwing up. But they were able to get the pictures that they felt confident with the pictures that they got. And they put me in my gurney, sent me off to my room, and obviously it was an instant, so I had to wait. Finally got the results in, and my doctor comes in with a bittersweet smile because he was right for trusting his instinct, but pretty bitter because it still wasn't a very great thing. So what he told me that I have is acute transverse myelitis, which is technically an autoimmune disease. And what it is the inflammation of the spine that knocks out the nervous system, and the communication no longer has a free line through my spine to communicate up and down. Therefore, lack of communication from the nervous system caused all these other issues I was having. Such a rare condition, such a rare disease that it doesn't really happen. And when it does happen to people, it's for three main reasons. And one would be hereditary. And it wasn't in my bloodstream, and it doesn't seem like it was hereditary. It could not see that to prove that that's the reason I got it. Another one was blunt force trauma, like car accident, falling off, injury. That never happened to me. Another one is negative reaction to a vaccine. I haven't had a vaccine in forever. Or contracted overseas somewhere else. Haven't even left the US in a very long time. So all these reasons didn't apply to me. So I was very lucky to be the 3% of people who get this with no cause whatsoever. So he goes on and starts prepping me for what to expect for recovery. And he gave me a number that was concerning, that 80% of people get about 50% back. And it's kind of random things. I'm like, okay, what do you mean by that? He's just like, well, there's an 80% chance that you're only going to recover about 50%. And then don't even worry about the other 30% because they don't recover. So he pretty much told me that I should not expect to get a full recovery. But he did believe that I will surpass that 50% recovery. It's like you're just going to get better. I don't know how much, I don't know how well you will improve, but I know you are going to fall into the ladder, into the highest of improvement. And I said, heck yeah, I am. I believed it. I have such confidence in my God. I have such confidence in the fact that I was chosen to go through this. It's pretty crazy. And we can go into that another day. But I literally felt like I was called for a moment as this. And I that what I was going through was a learning experience, and it was to bring glory, and it was to at one point in time in my life down the road, that this injury was going to be a blessing. And fast forward a little, I'm kind of starting to see that a little bit. So let's go back into the timeline now. So now I know what's going on, and they told me the steroids pretty much that they put me on there wasn't a bad thing, but it's not going to help me get better. So now it was time to just let the body do what it needs to do, because there is no medicine for this. There is no antidote. There's no vaccine, no immunization, no pills, no nothing for this. This is just sheer willpower of the body to bounce back. And I have a lot of that. I have a lot of willpower. And he saw that. My family saw that, and I knew that. I know this is crazy, but I was not afraid of my future. I was definitely concerned about the now, living in that moment, but I was not afraid of what my life would look like. I was not concerned about it. I was like, cool, let's do this day by day. What's the next step? Let's go there. So they took me to Kaiser in Vallejo, and that is where I began the physical therapy and the journey. But that is a story for another day. So stay tuned, because I will be dropping a video in regards to my stay at Kaiser Vallejo that you are not going to want to miss out. There's a lot of great moments, very, very inspiring stuff for sure, and I don't want you to miss out. So I'll be talking to you guys. Stay tuned. Know that I love you, and know to dig from within to be able to get to where you want to be.